Hello everyone, I will be talking about the age of structural adjustment from 1988 onwards. The seventh five-year plan, 1988 to 1993, was commissioned at the same time as the IMF, World Bank. The induced conditionality was accepted by the government in the guise of a structural adjustment program. The plan had set ambitious targets for overall reforms in the industrial sector, and included further deregulation, privatization, tariff reform, and regulation of foreign investment. As far as the three-year agreement, 1988 to 1991, with the IMF was concerned, the industrial policy outlined in the letter of interest committed the government of Pakistan to the following: limiting the list of specified industries, deregulating business decisions, raising the investment sanctioning limit annually. It was to be raised from 700 million rupees in 1988 to 1 billion rupees in 1989. Phasing out industrial location policies over a three-year period, and provision of infrastructural services, at prices that reflect economic costs. Divesting the shares of public sector companies to the private sector. Instituting a corporate rationalization program to enhance efficiency in the remaining, that is non-divested and public enterprises. Considering a realistic trade regime as a primary investment or structural adjustment effort. Enhancing export incentives. Reducing the level of protection accorded to different industries. Reducing the list of restricted import items, as well as those subject to quantitative restrictions. Achieving a tariff range of 0 to 100% by the 1st of July 1990, and phasing out all tariff exemptions by 1990 and 1991, except duty drawback for exporters. Exemptions for import of capital equipment in key industries and reasonable baggage allowances. The following prescriptions of the IMF's macroeconomic recipe have a direct impact on industrial development in Pakistan. An increase in the level of indirect taxation, in the form of a generalized sales tax, by July 1990. Withdrawal of subsidies on gas, electricity, telephones, and fertilizers. An increase in producer prices of major crops. This includes wheat, cotton, sugarcane, rice, and oilseeds, and in the prices of petroleum products. A 12.5% reduction in the public sector development program, during the agreement period, 1989 to 1991. And a restriction on government borrowing and credit allocation to the private sector. The World Bank, in its review of the program of 1988 to 1991, felt that the economy responded well to these policy reforms. Progress in implementing structural reforms to promote private sector activity has been exceptional during the last 4 years, despite the 3 changes in government during this period. The large-scale manufacturing sector managed an impressive 7.4% in 1991 to 1992, mainly due to the rapid expansion of cotton manufacture. The World Bank considered Pakistan to have achieved an excellent growth performance. Amongst the investment and industrial policies, followed was a forceful program of liberalizing the economy from government control. It includes reserved areas of investment, initiation of privatization, selling of manufacturing units, and promotion of investments in rural areas. This table depicts the consequences of these policies into these sectors, whose values tend to increase, decrease, or expand ranging from the year 1981 to 1992. World Bank's analysis: the cornerstone of the government's adjustment program is to increase the level and efficiency of private investment in the activity by deregulating the economy and promoting competition. Assessing the impact on the industrial sector. Moving on towards the impact on the industrial sector, and analyzing how this sector has changed over the years, while focusing primarily on the industrial sector since the 1990s. However, in the period after 1999, for the average of the 2000s, we see a huge shift in growth in the manufacturing sector, to a decade average of 7%, a phenomenal growth, the highest in manufacturing since the decade of the 1980s. In fact, there were some years when manufacturing growth in this decade grew by as much as 14% and even higher to 15.5%. The high average for the decade of the 2000s is even more striking, because towards the end of that decade, the manufacturing growth rate, as well as that of the overall economy, took a sharp fall. Table 7.7. Table shows that how much lower the growth rate of manufacturing was in the 1990s, compared to the 1980s, falling from a very impressive 8.21% to only 4.8%. Moreover, in the last 5 years of the 1990s, the growth was only 3.22%. In 1996 and 1997, the growth for the industrial sector was minus 0.1% and was only 1.5% in 1999 to 2000. Since 1990, the government of Pakistan has introduced several policies and regulatory measures to ensure the growth in the business sector of the country, and also to attract foreign direct investment. The requirement for government approval of foreign investment has been removed and 100% ownership is permitted, with the exception of projects in industries included in the specified list, which are arms and ammunition, security printing, currency and mint, high explosives, radioactive substances. Foreign investment remains prohibited in the areas of agricultural land, forestry, irrigation, real estate, insurance, health, and related services. Foreign firms can now also engage in export trading activities. Previously, the provincial governments had to issue a no-objection certificate, and effectively controlled the physical location of the investment. Now, these governments limit their prior approval only to so-called negative areas. Technology buyers face no ceilings over the amount of royalties and technical fees they are allowed to pay. Pakistanis and foreigners are now allowed to bring in, possess and take out foreign currency. For example, no permission is required to issue shares of Pakistani companies to foreign investors. The highly cumbersome duty drawback system is being replaced with a scheme whereby 80% of the duty drawback is paid automatically. Export incentives have been introduced or broadened. Moreover, import policy has been partially liberalized. The government has also enacted an extensive set of investment incentives, including tax holidays for projects in rural and underdeveloped areas. Experience in other countries generally indicates that these kinds of incentives are not cost-effective. The growth rate for the manufacturing sector was minus 3.6%. The manufacturing sector has struggled since then, and did so in all the years of the Pakistan People's Party regime from 2008 onwards. To add to Pakistan-specific problems, was also the global recession which began in 2008, and the phenomenal rise in world oil and food prices. The PPP government of 2008 to 2013 inherited difficult global conditions, which were not conducive to growth, and also had to deal with serious political and terrorist-oriented conditions. With the privatization programs of all governments since 1988, it is not surprising that public investment at 4.5% in 2002 to 2003 was half of what it was in 1988 to 1989. The gross fixed capital formation, GCFC, in the private sector in the large-scale manufacturing sector, fell continuously over the 1990s, by as much as 60% between 1991 to 1999. In 2000s, both total and fixed investment grew by rates, which were even higher than in the 1980s, when a great deal of growth took place. GDP grew to 9.2%. The private sector is now the lead sector in investment, unlike for the first 4 decades of Pakistan's existence. Public investment has been falling steadily over the last few decades, down to around 3.3% of GDP in 2010 to 2011. More than 4,000 industrial units were declared sick, and overall industrial production has been what it was in the 1990s, and has been like that after the Musharraf's artificial and unsustainable boom, which came to an end in 2007. The rate of interest in Pakistan was a controlled and regulated rate, which was kept low around 6% in the 1980s, was liberalized, and it made the market a consequence of reforms in the financial sector. Similarly, freeing up of the prices of utilities lets the market decide on forced prices up for gas, electricity, and petroleum inputs, all having an impact on final products. The tariff rates have fallen drastically, currently making imported goods cheaper.